This is not a surprise to anybody. It's really sad that it's got to this point, but I've got to do something for my own mental health, for my wife's, and for Archie's as well, because I could see where this was headed.
Behind the polished smiles and careful protocol, a financial secret quietly detonated inside palace walls. Investigators uncovered a hidden bank account buried beneath layers of discretion, and the fallout was swift. King Charles and Prince William moved together, ending months of hesitation and issuing a decision few thought they'd dare make. Meghan's title, once protected by tradition, was suddenly stripped away. So, why was the account concealed? Who knew about it? And how did this discovery force the monarchy's most decisive break yet from the crown itself? The shocking discovery that rocked the throne. In a world where the fairy tale glamour of royal life hides shadows darker than anyone could imagine, where sparkling smiles in palace corridors mask careful calculated schemes and glittering wedding bells ring over secrets that could topple dynasties, this is not just a story of royal drama. It is a tale of intrigue, betrayal, and money moving in ways no one dares to talk about. And it all began in the glittering halls of Buckingham Palace, a place where every penny, every document, every whispered conversation is guarded like a crown jewel. In early December 2025, what started as a routine financial review took a turn straight out of a thriller novel. Margaret Hartley, a meticulous accountant with over 20 years of royal service, was going through old records from the household of Harry and Meghan, back in the days before they made the shocking decision to step away from their royal duties. Margaret was known for her sharp eye, the kind that caught details most would miss. And this time, her instincts screamed that something was very, very wrong. At first glance, the discrepancies seemed small. Tiny mismatches in payments, invoices that didn't quite line up with events, expenses that whispered of secrets. Any ordinary person might have shrugged and moved on, dismissing them as minor mistakes. But Margaret wasn't ordinary. She spent 3 relentless days cross-checking every entry, every date, every receipt against royal calendars, guest lists, and official events. And then, slowly, patterns began to emerge, like shadows forming in the early morning mist. Money was slipping away, moving in directions no one authorized, and it was happening right under the palace's glittering chandeliers. Alarmed, Margaret brought her findings to Thomas Blackwell, the veteran finance chief who had steered royal coffers through the reigns of 3 monarchs. As Thomas scanned her reports, his usual calm demeanor vanished. His face went pale, and the room felt suddenly colder. This was not just a simple bookkeeping error. This was a breach, one that could shake the very foundations of the monarchy. Within hours, the alert reached Sir Clive Alderton, the king's trusted private secretary. He knew all too well that a single misstep could ignite a media firestorm, spark questions in Parliament, and plunge the palace into chaos. Acting with the precision of a seasoned strategist, he quietly assembled a top-secret team. This was no ordinary audit. The team consisted of elite finance experts, sharp legal minds, and a forensic investigator who specialized in tracking hidden money. Their orders were simple: find the truth and leave no trace behind. No leaks, no rumors, no scandal in the press. While Christmas lights twinkled outside the palace windows,
here and the royal residence in Windsor is getting in the holiday spirit.
This is so exciting. We're inside Windsor Castle, so come with us to look at the dazzling decorations over the festive period.
the team pored over bank statements, contracts, and wire transfers. Every page revealed something stranger than the last. And then, buried in the financial maze, they found it, a bombshell that could rewrite the story of recent royal history. Massive payments had been sent to a little-known consulting firm, funneled almost immediately to an offshore account in the Channel Islands. The account had been set up in early 2019, right after Harry and Meghan's lavish wedding. Since then, it had quietly swallowed hundreds of thousands of pounds. But the real shocker was not just the money, it was the timing. Deposits spiked immediately after major royal events, hinting at insider knowledge being turned into cold, hard cash. Who had orchestrated this? Whose hand was moving behind the scenes? All signs pointed to Meghan Markle, turning what had already been a family drama into a potential monarchy meltdown.
I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point, and the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything.
As the palace clock ticked toward midnight, the glittering fairy tale image of the royals began to crack. Behind the lights, the smiles, and the perfectly rehearsed public appearances, a storm was quietly gathering. A storm of secrets, deception, and betrayal that threatened to engulf the House of Windsor, and no one could predict where it would strike next. In Buckingham Palace, where the walls have seen centuries of history, it seemed that this December, history was watching back, and the world was about to see a story that would make even the most elaborate spy novels seem tame by comparison. How did Meghan react to the loss of title? Will she be able to regain the title? Let's delve into the details of the struggle between William and Meghan over the Duchess title. The Royal Showdown. The Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, a woman whose life has already been a remarkable blend of Hollywood glamour, philanthropic endeavors, and royal intrigue, is reportedly preparing herself for what could be one of the most astonishing legal battles in recent royal history. Sources close to the family suggest that Meghan may soon find herself pitted against none other than her brother-in-law, Prince William, in a high-stakes struggle over one of the most iconic symbols of her royal identity, the title of Duchess of Sussex. For Meghan, this is far from a hypothetical concern. Insiders say that a growing sense of unease has taken root in the Californian-based royal. The fear, they claim, is that once Prince William eventually assumes the throne as king, he could take decisive steps to remove the title from her entirely. The thought of losing this defining piece of her public identity has reportedly struck a deep chord of anxiety in the Duchess, who has long fought to balance her royal role with her personal and professional life. This anxiety has only intensified following a series of unprecedented moves by King Charles III, which many observers view as a chilling warning to Meghan. In October 2025, the king formally and unequivocally stripped his own brother, Prince Andrew, of all remaining royal titles, styles, and honors, a sweeping action that shook the monarchy and dominated headlines worldwide. The move, designed to streamline and modernize the royal family, was reportedly encouraged by Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, signaling a firm, no-nonsense approach to the institution's future. The implications for Meghan could not be clearer. The public and definitive nature of Prince Andrew's stripping of titles has made the possibility of a similar fate for Meghan far more tangible. Sources suggest that the Duchess is keenly aware of this precedent and is determined not to wait passively for history to repeat itself. She's not taking any chances, a close insider tells Woman's Day. Meghan is fully prepared to fight to preserve her Duchess title. According to the source, the Duchess has already begun consulting with a team of top legal experts to explore every possible avenue to safeguard her title. These consultations reportedly cover complex legal strategies, historical precedents, and even constitutional interpretations, all aimed at determining whether Meghan has a legitimate case to resist any attempt to remove her royal designation. The insider adds, she may actually have a case. Meghan is serious, and she's not afraid to stand her ground if it comes to it. The situation is made all the more fascinating by Meghan's unique position within the royal family. Unlike many royal figures whose roles are firmly defined by centuries-old tradition, Meghan's status as an American-born former actress gives her a distinct perspective and, arguably, a different set of legal protections. While the British monarchy is steeped in centuries of protocol and hierarchy, Meghan's background and international profile could provide her with leverage that a typical royal might not possess. What makes this potential clash even more compelling is the dramatic backdrop against which it is unfolding. The royal family has been in a period of intense scrutiny and transformation. Media attention, public opinion, and internal family dynamics are all converging to create a volatile environment where every move is analyzed, debated, and dissected. In this context, Meghan's determination to retain her title is more than a personal legal concern. It is a high-stakes chapter in an ongoing saga that has captivated the world for years. While the specifics of her legal strategy remain closely guarded, sources indicate that Meghan's team is exploring every conceivable angle, from constitutional law to precedent within the monarchy, to ensure that she retains the title she has carried since her marriage into the royal family. The very notion of the Duchess challenging the heir to the throne in court is extraordinary, but insiders say it reflects the extraordinary circumstances and the fierce resolve of a woman who has already defied expectations at every stage of her life. As the royal family continues to evolve, and as Meghan weighs her options, the world watches with bated breath. The Duchess of Sussex, once known primarily for her Hollywood roles, may soon be remembered for taking on a legal battle that could reshape not only her own destiny, but also the very understanding of titles, power, and influence within one of the most famous families in the world. Whatever the outcome, one thing is clear: Meghan Markle is not a figure who will quietly accept her fate. She is ready, willing, and, according to sources, fully prepared to fight to preserve her name, her legacy, and her title. How did it all begin? Was it a case of fraud? Let's dive into the details of the beginning of how the wealth was illegally amassed. The labyrinth of hidden wealth. A financial labyrinth so complex it appears deliberately crafted to remain hidden from the light. Here, secrecy wasn't merely a safeguard. It was a fortress, carefully constructed to protect assets never intended for public view. The offshore account in Jersey was no ordinary bank deposit. It wasn't a place to tuck away a few pounds. It was a fortress of money, fortified with international laws specifically crafted to protect the ultra-wealthy. The moment it came into existence, March 2018, when Meghan was still finding her footing in her dazzling new royal life, it suggested careful planning, not happenstance. Yet, there was no hint of her name anywhere. Instead, a chain of mysterious entities stretched across continents. A company in the British Virgin Islands owned another in Delaware, which in turn was managed by a Swiss trust. Each link was a deliberate layer of separation, crafting what experts call plausible deniability. A safety net that could confuse even the most determined investigator. Any novelist writing a political thriller would be green with envy at this level of strategic obfuscation. Palace investigators, armed with court orders, Forensic accountants and top-tier legal minds began to peel back the layers. Slowly, a clear path emerged, one that led unmistakably to Meghan as the ultimate beneficiary and controller. This was no casual setup. It was orchestrated by professionals who knew the ins and outs of global banking like the back of their hands. Every loophole was exploited, every regulation navigated with surgical precision. The flow of money was as fascinating as the structure itself. Deposits arrived from multiple, seemingly unrelated sources. A shadowy consulting firm billed the Sussexes, while entertainment giants in Los Angeles, TV producers, and celebrity media outlets contributed funds that varied dramatically in size, from modest £10,000 trickles to sudden £50,000 surges. The timing was equally telling. A quiet family gathering at Sandringham would suddenly be followed by a substantial deposit just days later. A state banquet with visiting world leaders? Another influx of cash, often coinciding with a media leak that thrust the royal family back into headlines. The precision was uncanny, as if the money itself was choreographed to mirror Meghan's public appearances. Outgoing flows painted an even richer portrait. Money quietly moved into California real estate, New York stock portfolios, and various showbiz ventures. It was like watching an empire being built in the shadows, diversified, far-reaching, yet hidden behind a facade of dutiful public life. To the outside world, she remained the devoted duchess attending charity galas and royal engagements. Behind the scenes, a silent empire of wealth was quietly taking shape. Legal experts pored over every thread, weighing the delicate balance between legality and ethics. Were offshore accounts themselves illegal? Not inherently, but for members of the royal family, monetizing access, influence, or status crossed a line that was sacred, enshrined in centuries of tradition, duty over dollars. The laws of finance could shield you, but the moral and symbolic codes of the monarchy loomed larger, demanding loyalty and discretion above personal gain. Sir Clive, one of the senior investigators, stared at the sprawling evidence with a mixture of disbelief and unease. The discovery wasn't just about money. It threatened the very soul of the crown. Was this an act of personal ambition, a betrayal of trust, or something even colder and more calculated? Each revelation only deepened the mystery, pulling the family into uncharted waters where public perception, private wealth, and royal protocol collided in a volatile mix. As the investigation progressed, one truth became undeniable. This was more than financial maneuvering. It was a drama of strategy, secrecy, and power. Every deposit, every offshore entity, every meticulously timed transaction seemed to whisper a message. Appearances are deceiving. Behind the polished public image, a web of wealth and influence stretched across the globe, hidden in plain sight. And now, the palace itself had to confront a question that could change history. How do you protect an institution built on trust when the very people inside it may be playing a game of their own making? In this labyrinth of cash, control, and clandestine deals, every discovery seemed to lead to more questions than answers. The intrigue wasn't just alive, it was thriving, and no one could predict where the next revelation would strike. The crown's most guarded corridors had become the stage for a financial thriller that rivaled any fiction, yet the stakes were real, and the consequences could echo for generations. Why was William at her throat? What was William's contribution in all of these? Let's dive into the details of the whistle blown by William, of all people. William's tormenting revelation. Step into the storm that engulfed Prince William, a tempest of betrayal, duty, and heartbreak. It was a sharp, biting January morning at Kensington Palace, the kind of cold that cut through the bones and seemed to mirror the chill in William's chest. Sir Clive arrived promptly, his presence carrying the weight of dread. His briefcase, heavy and deliberate, seemed almost to thrum with secrets, documents, files, and irrefutable proof that promised to shatter carefully curated illusions. What had been described as a routine briefing quickly twisted into something far darker, a revelation that threatened to upend not just a family, but the very image of the monarchy itself. The briefing unfurled like a thriller in real life. Offshore accounts, timed payments, corporate structures layered in obfuscation, all threads leading back to Meghan. William's face, usually composed and measured, stiffened as long-held suspicions erupted into bitter, undeniable truth. For years, he'd sensed a subtle discord beneath the charm, the way Meghan's camera-ready smile and effortless media handling often outshone even the most seasoned royals. He had quietly warned Harry before the wedding, suggesting caution, urging him to take time to see beyond the glitter and the headlines. Harry, infuriated, had fired back with accusations of jealousy and prejudice. That clash fractured their bond, leaving a hidden scar between brothers, an unhealed wound that now throbbed with undeniable clarity. As William sifted through the mounting evidence, a taste of vindication mixed with ash. It was a bitter flavor. The documents, detailed and damning, painted a picture of exploitation and opportunism. Meghan had allegedly leveraged royal privileges from the very beginning, weaving a world of benefit around herself, while Harry appeared blissfully unaware. Every revelation seemed to amplify the betrayal, but what cut the deepest was one quiet, shocking fact. Harry had left no trace of complicity. His heart, seemingly captured by love, had walked blindly over loyalty and family. Rage simmered beneath William's calm exterior, urging immediate confrontation. Yet Sir Clive counseled caution. First, the King, Charles, must be informed. In a palace where protocol often outweighed personal feeling, patience became a bitter necessity. Alone in the silent corridors afterward, William's mind replayed memory after memory, each now tinged with doubt. The smiles at christenings, the laughter at weddings, the polished toasts, what had once been genuine joy, now felt like stages in a grand, meticulously orchestrated performance. His heart ached for Harry, the younger brother he had guided, protected, and shielded through childhood tragedies. That same brother now seemed teetering on the edge of heartbreak, entangled in choices built on shifting sands. William's thoughts swirled with anger, sorrow, and a relentless question. How much pain could one heart endure before duty demanded sacrifice? Before any confrontation, before the inevitable reckoning, William knew a conversation with his father awaited, an honest, raw exchange with Charles. In the intricate game of royal responsibility, personal anguish collided violently with obligations to the crown. Every step, every decision carried the weight of generations, yet William also recognized the human cost, the erosion of trust, the betrayal of brotherly bonds, and the quiet suffering of the family he loved fiercely. And in that moment, William faced the cruel paradox of his position. Loyalty to family demanded action, yet justice demanded caution. Could brotherhood survive in a world so deeply shadowed by secrecy, ambition, and deception? Or would the very fabric of their connection unravel under the weight of truth? As he stood amid the echoing halls of Kensington, William felt the full force of his role, not merely as a prince, not merely as a son, but as a brother standing at the crossroads of love, duty, and a scandal that threatened to redefine everything. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the last. Every thought pulled him between the man he was, the prince he must be, and the brother he still hoped to save. In that charged, frozen morning, the stage was set for choices that could not be undone, a royal chessboard where every move carried the weight of legacy, heartbreak, and unspoken loyalties. What is the position of the palace in the midst of these? What actions are being planned? Let's dig into the details of the palace's heightened confusion. The palace's perilous crossroads. Step into the marble halls of Buckingham Palace, where a storm of tension swirled in a room normally reserved for calm deliberation. The royal war room was alive with unease, every whispered word carrying the weight of history and the risk of disaster. Around a polished oak table, King Charles's closest advisors, lawyers, communications strategists, and trusted aides huddled like generals plotting for an unseen battlefield. Outside, the palace glittered with tradition and pomp, but inside, the air was thick with dread. This was no ordinary day. A crisis had erupted that threatened to shake the monarchy to its foundations. The revelation, laid bare by the ever-calm Sir Clive, was nothing short of shocking. An insider within the royal circle had been quietly trading access for profit, channeling hundreds of thousands of pounds with precision so cold it felt almost surgical. Every transaction was deliberate, calculated, and horrifying in its clarity. This wasn't a slip, a rogue misstep, or a simple lapse in judgment. It was a carefully orchestrated scheme, executed with the kind of meticulous care one might expect from a mastermind in a spy novel. The betrayal cut deeper because it was personal, intimate, and entirely preventable. If only it had been anticipated. The lawyers, ever cautious, outlined the legal labyrinth before them. Removing royal titles wasn't a simple flick of a pen. It was a dance along a constitutional tightrope that had not been attempted in living memory. Jurisdictional disputes loomed large. Due process could not be ignored, and every move risked triggering lawsuits that might expose uncomfortable truths in the public eye. One misstep could drag private matters into courtrooms worldwide, unraveling secrets long kept behind palace walls. The stakes were higher than anyone could comfortably admit. Reputation, legacy, and public trust hung by a thread. Meanwhile, the communications team sketched an even grimmer picture. If news of the betrayal leaked, intentionally or accidentally, the narrative would explode. She could transform into the embattled underdog, a clever media figure standing against the ancient traditions of the monarchy. Headlines could shift, public opinion could sway, and decades of carefully nurtured respect might dissolve overnight. Silence, too, was dangerous. Let the palace appear to cover up wrongdoing, and whispers would turn into inquiries, exposing public funds and raising uncomfortable questions about accountability and privilege. In this war, every choice was fraught, every inaction deadly. Then came the debate over compromise. Could a quiet settlement work? A confidential negotiation? Evidence exchanged? Sums returned? All sealed away from prying eyes. Some argued it could contain the fallout, protect the family, and avoid the media frenzy. But William, ever protective of the institution's integrity, rejected the idea outright. Any perceived leniency could be weaponized, twisted into claims of bias or favoritism, turning the family's restraint into weakness for the world to dissect. Harry's presence loomed, unspoken but palpable. Any decisive action would force his hand, demand a choice that could widen the familial rift beyond repair. The young prince's conflicting loyalties, public scrutiny, and private heartbreak intertwined, forming a knot almost impossible to untangle. Charles, as always, listened first, a silent sentinel absorbing every argument, weighing every word. Then, with measured gravitas, he spoke. The crown demanded service above self. To ignore betrayal, however painful, would undermine the monarchy itself. To protect the line, to honor duty over emotion, was to safeguard centuries of tradition and trust. In the end, a consensus emerged. The decision would rest with Charles alone after a period of private reflection. Yet even in agreement, the weight of the moment pressed heavily on all present. The choice required boldness, unflinching resolve, and the courage to risk personal pain for the greater good. The palace was on the edge, balanced between exposure and concealment, between scandal and silence. One wrong move, and the fracture could become irreparable, leaving the monarchy not merely wounded, but fundamentally weakened. The room, hushed in anticipation, felt the magnitude of history pressing in. Every heartbeat, every glance, and every silent calculation carried the gravity of a throne under siege, the fragile balance between family loyalty and duty to the crown teetering perilously. What is King Charles's position? Did he play any role in the background? Let's take a look at King Charles's verdict that agonized some quarters. Charles's agonizing verdict and the heart-wrenching letter. In the hushed, almost reverent corridors of Clarence House, King Charles shut himself away, the world outside fading into irrelevance. For 3 unrelenting days, he grappled with an inner storm, the weight of his crown pressing on his conscience like never before. Around him, mountains of files, letters, and financial statements formed silent witnesses to betrayal, misjudgment, and secrets long buried. Every sheet he turned held a question. Could mercy be granted? Was it possible that mistakes were innocent, born of ignorance rather than intent? But as he probed deeper, the elegant facade of royal propriety offered no comfort. Evidence of careful concealment, of money moved in perfect synchrony with public events, of private promises sold to the highest bidder, all hinted at a deliberate, calculated design. At the heart of this turmoil, one name echoed relentlessly: Harry, the boy who had been left unmoored after Diana's tragic death, seeking solace in love.
Those shocking allegations about Princess Diana's death. Authorities now reviewing the new and sensational claim that she was actually murdered by the British government.
In the promise of a life unbound by royal expectation, Meghan had whispered freedom, a fresh start, and Harry had believed it. But that belief had grown into a fragile illusion, one that now threatened to shatter the delicate bonds of family forever. Charles knew that if he confronted this illusion, Harry's defenses would harden, accusations would fly, and ties might break irreparably. Yet indecision was a luxury he could not afford. Watching over this storm was William, observant, cautious, a mirror of their father's earlier instincts. The warnings William had voiced years before now felt eerily prophetic. Charles also bore a larger, lifelong mission, the careful crafting of his legacy. to modernize the monarchy, to repair a reputation tarnished by decades of scrutiny, to show wisdom, compassion, and relevance in equal measure. Failure here was not merely personal. It threatened the very institution he had sworn to uphold. The throne, if left unguarded, invited exploitation in subtle, devastating forms. Legal advisors, meticulous and relentless, laid out the options. Parliament could be involved, dragging the monarchy into the harsh glare of public debate. Or Charles could act through royal prerogatives, asserting his authority in a controlled, calculated manner. Both paths promised scrutiny, criticism, and spectacle. Even the Archbishop weighed in. True mercy demanded accountability. To neglect it would allow harm to ripple outward, tainting not just family, but institution and trust itself. Finally, clarity emerged. With a quiet yet unshakable resolve, Charles made his decision. Certain royal titles must be revoked, but he would act with care, not cruelty. Harry deserved to hear it first, privately, away from headlines and cameras. Pen in hand, Charles wrote. Every word weighed with love and firmness. The letter opened with tender memories, reminders of bonds unbroken, of laughter and shared history that could never be erased. And then came the truth, laid out plainly. Financial irregularities, missteps linked to Meghan, stated with clinical precision, stripped of emotion but not of consequence. The message did not demand Harry's hatred or sever love. It asked only for acknowledgement, reflection, and a choice. Maintain loyalty at a respectful distance, or confront the problems and seek to mend them. The note closed with hope, tempered by the steel of inevitability. The letter traveled across the Atlantic to California, landing like a thunderclap in Harry's hands. Initial disbelief gave way to anger, confusion hardening into fury. Calls went unanswered, messages ignored until finally a conversation erupted, raw and volatile. Harry accused, lamented, and railed against perceived persecution. Charles listened, unwavering, armed only with facts and principle. The exchange ended in bitterness and regretful barbs, Harry choosing Meghan over reconciliation, declaring the chasm between father and sons unbridgeable, and then silence. On that line, a fragile thread snapped. The monarchy had survived centuries of upheaval, but in that instant, a family's bonds frayed irreparably. The consequences were already gathering like storm clouds on the horizon, personal, public, and historical. The quiet corridors of Clarence House, once a sanctuary, now echoed with the heavy, hollow weight of choices made and connections severed. The crown remained, but at what cost? What happened after the king's verdict? What effect will it have on the monarchy? Let's find out. The explosive aftermath and truth's triumphant reveal. The palace announcement hit the world like a thunderclap at exactly 10 a.m. on Thursday, designed to dominate headlines and control the news cycle. It was short, sharp, and devastating. Meghan Markle, the Duchess, once celebrated for charm and charisma, was facing serious scrutiny. Titles stripped, privileges revoked, all tied to alleged financial improprieties and breaches of royal protocol. The statement was measured, careful. Regret was expressed, integrity promised, but details were deliberately withheld, likely to avoid legal entanglements. Almost immediately, the media erupted. Alerts flashed across smartphones. News anchors stammered in disbelief, and social media platforms ignited in polarized fury. Supporters cried foul accusing the institution of racism and systemic bias, while critics applauded the palace for accountability and discipline. The story didn't just stay in Britain, it ricocheted around the globe. In the United States, debates over fairness and empathy raged. In Europe, legal experts dissected the implications of the action. Even financial markets felt subtle tremors from the palace scandal. Yet for California, Meghan's home turf, the silence was telling. For more than a day, there were no official comments, only whispers and anticipation building. Then, 36 hours later, Meghan's response dropped, like a bombshell on top of the palace's initial shockwave. Her statement was defiant, indignant, and unflinching. She denied any wrongdoing, accused the palace of bigotry, and framed herself as the victim of systemic injustice. The narrative was compelling, painted as a story of color-based double standards within the royal hierarchy. Public sympathies were tugged in her direction. Her lawyers hinted at lawsuits, and Prince Harry promised unwavering protection, invoking memories of Diana's tragic battles with palace scrutiny. Overnight, the royal household's carefully crafted order began to unravel. Facts became secondary to perception. Truth blurred into narrative, and international opinion wavered, swayed by emotion as much as evidence. But the palace was not without countermeasures. Behind the scenes, an anonymous source leaked critical documentation to a prominent journalist, a treasure trove of statements, emails, and communications that had been meticulously redacted but still damning. These documents were verified, airtight, and soon the story pivoted. The Sunday expose detailed alleged payments for personal information and compromising material, $25,000 for private family details, $15,000 for exclusive photographs. The revelations left Meghan's defenders scrambling. Claims of bias and persecution crumbled under the weight of clear, traceable evidence. Across the Atlantic, U.S. media coverage became more nuanced, acknowledging that misconduct could not be ignored, regardless of past public sympathy. Meghan's team fired back, arguing that the leaks were illegal, unethical, and a violation of privacy. But the public tide had shifted. The palace, maintaining a strategic silence, allowed the evidence to speak for itself. The story of deliberate monetization of private family matters became impossible to dismiss. What had started as a scandal centered on reputation evolved into a gripping tale of glamour, greed, and high-stakes power struggles. The narrative left lasting scars. For the palace, it was a humbling reminder that tradition and authority can be challenged with the force of modern media. For Meghan and Harry, it was a high-risk gamble of narrative and image, blending victimhood with controversy. Around the world, audiences debated, dissected, and speculated, wondering who truly held the moral high ground. Yet amid the chaos, one thing remained undeniable. The truth, or at least the evidence presented, had shifted the story's balance. As the dust settled, questions lingered in the gilded corridors of the crown. What shadows remain? Which alliances will hold, and which will fracture under pressure? In the theater of royalty, image is everything, and power, as ever, comes with a steep and often ruthless price. The drama was far from over, but the opening acts had already reshaped perceptions and rewritten the rules of engagement between monarchy, media, and the public. So, do you think Meghan truly deserved to lose her title? Would she ever be able to regain it? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.